Welcome to Working with Cameras. Cameras are our window into TouchDesigner Render Network, so let's take a closer look at how we can get started using them. We're going to begin by setting up a basic render network, so let's use the Tab key to open up the Op Create dialog. Let's hold down the Control key, add a camera, geometry, and light here to our network. Head over to the Top family and add a render top here into our network as well. Now, it's going to be helpful for us here, in this case, to actually see this from a slightly different vantage point. So let's split our view and open up our geometry viewer here on the right-hand side so we can better see what's happening here. Now, with our torus in this position, it's going to be difficult for us to see exactly what's happening. So let's go ahead and rotate this on the x-axis by 90 degrees. Now, some of the important things that we can do with cameras are think about how we might position them in space. Now, it's really helpful for us to kind of have this configuration for looking at them, but it can be a little bit frustrating to move and position cameras manually. So we might imagine a world where we're kind of moving a camera left or right or up or down, and we want to kind of dial in its position. We can instead use ideas from the SOP family to kind of better take advantage of a few features that are going to make this easier. Let's take a look at that. Let's use the Tab key to open up the Op Create dialog, head back to the Surface Operator family, and add a circle SOP here into our network. Next, we're going to take advantage of a feature that exists here on our surface operators. It's helpful to see them inside of our geometry viewer. Before we do that, let's add a null here to our circle. I'm going to hold down Alt-N to add a null to my network and drop that down. Next, I'm going to go ahead and this time I'm going to use the template flag. The template flag is this kind of magenta purple looking flag. And that's actually going to let us see our operator here in our network. Now, we don't see it right now because it's actually inside of our torus, but let's change the orientation of our circle to be ZX instead. Now I can kind of see this faint outline here. Now, what I want to do is I actually want to use that as the path for my camera. So let's head back to our camera component. We're going to go ahead and change its translation point to 0. So it's now positioned at origin, and I'm going to grab this null and I'm going to drop that on the path SOP. Now it's difficult for me to see this at the moment, but let's actually head back to our circle and let's actually scoot our circle over, and this time let's right click on the wire between our circle and null, insert an operator that's a transform SOP here, and now we can do a universal scale to kind of make this a little bit larger. Now this is pretty great. I really like what's happening here because now what we'll see is if we head back to our camera component, we'll see that we have this position slider, and that's going to allow us to animate our camera along our path. Now the only disadvantage that we have at this particular moment is that our camera is not looking at our geometry, and we can fix that pretty easily. Let's add a null component. A null component acts as an empty piece of geometry inside of our environment, and this has a lot of advantages for us because it has all the same spatial properties that we might think of with a component, but it doesn't render any geometry. On my camera, I'm going to take this null too, and I'm going to drag it onto the look at position. And now what's going to happen if I take a look at my render top down here, as I animate my camera along its path, we can see that my camera continuously looks towards that null. Now this is really helpful because it means that I can control the focus, I can control where my camera's looking without having to think about changing its rotation every frame. And in fact, if we want to make that orbit a little bit larger, we can head back to our transform SOP and just turn up its size a little bit. This is just one of the kind of convenient ways that we can think about positioning spatially how we might create some animation. Now, it's helpful for us to know and important for us to know that both our geometry and our lighting components also contain look at and path parameters. So we can take advantage of this same behavior on both geometry and lights as well, which allows us to build some more complex scenes. Let's take a look at one other feature here with our camera, and that is its projection type. So if we head to the view page, we'll see that we have this projection. Now we're currently set to perspective, but we can also view our scene as orthographic. This is really useful in a number of different circumstances. Or we can do a perspective ortho blend. And this lets us blend seamlessly between our projection, view and our orthographic view. Now our projection width is a little bit wide here, but if we turn that down to say like 2, we can see that as we move between those, that would actually change the type of projection mechanics we're using here for our camera. There are lots of ways that we can use cameras and scenes, and this is just the beginning of some of the features that we can take advantage of here inside of TouchDesigner when it comes to using cameras.